was a one-score game, but it felt like a blowout. It was not pretty for the Cincinnati Bengals against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. The Bengals dropped an ugly, ugly football game by only 6 points, which is much closer than the game felt, to the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. If you're new to the podcast, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and you can find us on YouTube every day or anywhere you get your podcast. We appreciate all you everydayers and everyone who makes us their first listen. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, who helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. And James, there are a number of stats we could talk about that would tell a story that is different from 16 to 10. There are a lot of things that we could talk about in this game, from 8 running plays, which is certainly a place to start, and the ineffectiveness of those running plays, to how Jake Browning played, the lack of answers from the defense against a truly terrible Pittsburgh Steelers offense coming into this game. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the obvious question or answer to a question that I thought we knew. In coming into this game, the coaches said, hey, we're going to run our offense. And Jake said, hey, run the offense. And all of that happened. And they said that, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to run their same offense where they're throwing the ball a ton and dropping Jake Browning back like they have with Joe Burrow. And yet I look up and, well, they throw it nearly 30 times, 30-plus dropbacks, and they've ran the ball 8 times with one running back and Joe Mixon, and that's it. And so Jake Browning is not Joe Burrow is the takeaway from today. That's takeaway 1. That's where I want to start and reiterate, because guess what? Most quarterbacks can't survive with 8 run plays. Joe Burrow is very, very good at it and can do it against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jake Browning can't. And he can't for a variety of reasons. Your defense is flawed. They're not as good as you would like to be against a Steelers offense that, you're right, stinks. I was here. The Steelers offense is not good. Kenny Pickett looks lost in the pocket at times, even when pressure isn't there. I don't think that they suddenly found something on offense. And I know they only scored 16 points, but we could talk about the record they snapped, which I'm sure you've heard already. But just going back to Jake Browning, I thought that all of that talk was a bit tongue-in-cheek of, oh, yeah, we're going to run what we run. And they kind of did. And there were some changes, but I would have lost a lot of money on FanDuel if the over-under for Joe Mixon carries, or PrizePicks, if the more or less for Mixon carries was 13, I probably would have taken more. Or Bengals running back carries 13, I would have hammered the more with PrizePicks. And yet here we are. It was 8 carries for Joe Mixon, 16 yards total. Oh, well, he sticks. Fine. If that's the case, then why didn't Chase Brown get on the field at all on offense? He is healthy. I've confirmed that. So it's a tough situation. And Zach Taylor blamed it on lack of plays as part of it, just not a lot of plays on offense, which, okay, I get it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is it's Jake Browning. This offense just isn't going to be the same, and we saw it. The final numbers look good for him, by the way, but it was not a great day for the Bengals starting quarterback now, who made his first NFL start with Joe Burrow out.
Yeah, we'll talk about Jake Browning because, like you said, the way that the game went was obviously not helpful for him. The way that the game was called, not making his job particularly easy. I did think that the offense looked different to some degree, but not drastically so. Like you said, there were, though, to me, some pretty clear differences in the way they approached the game that maybe will become clearer when we've had a chance to digest things and look at tape. But if your running game is going to be as ineffective as the Bengals running game was today, And you can look at traditional stats. You can look at EPA per play. Both of them are dreadful. I mean,
Awful.
miserable. And some of that's the offensive line and plays getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage. Some of that's Joe Mixon not being able to break a tackle today until a really good play in his defense on the screen, which accounts for a lot of Jake Browning's yards in this game. But you and I both expected a more balanced approach on offense in this game. The challenge that I would issue or the question that I would ask for those who are looking at 8 carries and saying, why didn't they run the ball more? Without really looking too much deeper, is go look play by play at the situations where it was a mixed down, meaning it wasn't a down where you have to pass the ball, and see which opportunities there really were to run the ball. There's a handful of 3rd and shorts where maybe when Jake Browning is your quarterback, you just hand the ball off instead, or even 3rd and medium, maybe when Jake Browning is your quarterback, handing the ball off is a better idea. There's maybe a couple of first downs that you could point to as well, where they could have tried to stay ahead of the chains. But really, when I went back and I looked play by play, I didn't find a ton of plays where I was like, yeah, they really handing the ball off here sure would have been a better idea. And that's hindsight, obviously. And a lot of this analysis is hindsight at this point. The game is over. But your point that Browning is not Burrow is something that I think needs to be understood very clearly going forward in the way this team wants to manage games, because they can't manage games as if they have Joe Burrow with Jake Browning at quarterback. The differences are too stark, and we can talk about some of those. A lot of the problems that I kind of hinted at, my concerns for Jake Browning coming into this game showed up, and we can get into that more, but they need to change the way they approach games. But you can't get outpossessed by 15 minutes. You can't get outgained by 200 yards against one of the worst offenses in the NFL. You can't take some of the sacks they took and have some of the bad. I mean, they were lucky on offense, and this was the result.
I agree. They should have had more interceptions. There should have been a pick 6 that ended up being dropping for nothing, or the one got caught, I think. But yeah, there was a couple of
Chase had 2 big catches on deflected passes.
Yeah, there was one that was a pick 6, like all of those things. And so I agree, like on the situationally, if you just look at the play sheet, there might not be an obvious one. But that's the old Bengals. This new Bengals, if they're going to be successful, they have to be able to find a way to run the ball. And I think that's what was exposed today even more, is if they need to run it, they can. They can. Or they're not willing to get under center more.
Quarterback specifically, because they had been like average, and today was dreadful.
But that's what we're talking about now. And so you have to run it with Browning. You can survive throwing the ball 60 times with Joe. It's different. The offense should be different. And I don't know what the answer is, because I think there are scheme issues, and that we can't spend a ton of time on this in our post-game show. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it. The run game probably needs to be torn up and rebuilt from scratch. It might. It might. Here's the other part. The personnel certainly needs to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb this offseason. There's a reason we talked about running back as much as we did coming into this year. And I think right now there's some issues with the run game, and then the personnel certainly doesn't help those issues, and it makes it that much worse because there isn't enough talent there to overcome them when there is issues. And when they do block it the right way and there is lanes, Mixon gets 3 yards when he should have 8 or 12. And call me whatever you want, whatever. I don't know. They don't have trust in Chase Brown, obviously. I don't get why.
Yeah.
But there's got to be someone. You need to we talked about this for months now. Before the deadline, I was like, find someone that you can hand the ball off to that isn't Joe Mixon. And yet here we are, and Mixon didn't get it done. This Bengals rushing offense didn't get it done. I think there's more on offense that we need to get to. So let's continue our post-game coverage. 16-10, the Bengals have lost 3 straight, and they're 5-6 on the season, 0-4 in the division. Let's discuss the offense and the state of the offense coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is where you need to go right now. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you got to lean on LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team right now. It's not another job board. No, they have a vast network of more than 1 billion. That's a billion with a B professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy. And you have so many qualified candidates. And in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. All you have to do to post your job for free is go to linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by BetterHelp. And with the holidays coming around, we know that this time of year can be a lot. Christmas right around the corner. It's natural to feel some anxiety about it, but adding something new and positive to your life can help to counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all the stress and the change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. It's great for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries in a time when it can be hard to set boundaries with people you're very familiar with. It can empower you to be the best version of yourself. And if you're thinking of starting, no easier way to get started than with BetterHelp, entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get started with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if that initial assignment isn't working well for you. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today. You'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn.
Let's discuss the offensive line a little bit more. Jake Browning a little bit more. I thought, Jake, the offensive line did okay. I did. I think like Browning, there was one time he took, it was early in the game, and TJ Watt has to go through two different Bengals to get to him, and Browning holds onto the ball and holds onto the ball and holds onto the ball and holds onto the ball, and then he obviously gets hit because at some point you're going to get hit. I think that's something we could see improve over time, but that was certainly glaring, especially early in this game, is just how long he was holding onto the ball, trying to read the defense. And in one way you like it because you don't want him to make a ton of mistakes. On the other, you don't want it to turn into sacks, which it did.
Yeah, he said it's something that'll have to adjust to and find the balance, which is something that we heard Joe Burrow say too. And maybe we need to give him some slack in that area, having not played in a regular season game as a starter in his NFL career. But this is an issue that goes back to the preseason for Jake Browning. It was an issue that we saw with him in training camp. He just simply, not that anyone does this consistently, does not process in the way that Joe Burrow processes. And that leads to holding the ball too long, leads to missed reads, leads to late throws, leads to throws that end up, off target because they're late, which happened a couple of times in this game as well. And it does make the offensive line look worse. I think that at least 3, I want to say, of the sacks were of Jake Browning's making, and then one is just a blown protection between Drew Sample and Jonah Williams, leaving TJ Watt unblocked. Like, that's not any individual problem. It's a communication issue, probably between Jonah and Drew Sample. Could be quarterback involved there, hard to say. But the playing on time issue and the holding the ball issue are things that I talked about with Browning going into the game, right? They're things that we talked about in the preview show. They're things we talked about with Jake Browning back in the preseason. And that he would need to play on time. And in one of the Bengals' best drives of the game, before he threw an interception, Browning was playing on time. And that was evident on third downs that they converted. When they converted back-to-back third downs on that drive, it was evident when he got the ball out on time to Jamar Chase on the vertical and gave Jamar a chance to make that play on the sideline for a 25-yard gain. His best drive leading into the interception involved him playing on time and getting the ball out when it needed to come out. And then he got sped up a little bit. So there's this balance that he needs to find between holding the ball too long, which he did early, and then trying to get the ball out too quickly and trying to get through his progressions too quickly and then not actually getting through the progression. If you listen to what he said about the interception he threw after the game, he's like, he said he needed to force that defender to declare in coverage and then react to that rather than kind of guessing or misreading essentially what the coverage was. The ball ends up, I think, late to Jamar anyway, but it's late in a way that doesn't force the defender to commit. The defender's buzzing out there anyway, to use Browning's term and the announcer's term, into the flat. Very easy interception, just a misread from Browning. And there is a balance to be struck there, but whether he can strike the balance is a question, because these are issues that we've seen with him the entirety of his time with the Bengals this season at least. And, rep should help, but it's fair to wonder how much better that can get and also how much that matters, frankly, for this year. Obviously the team wants to win games, but in the grand scheme of things, they should be acquiring a better backup quarterback next year.
Well, I think that this was the first step of his opportunity to show that he is a backup in the NFL. And by backup, I mean roster backup. Brandon Allen, I'm going to get my 4+ years in as a backup in this league. And it's hard to do. And yeah, no doubt. And that's the step. And the thing is because there will be a lot of scheme talk this week. And I do think the scheme, you look at it, and Browning deserves some credit here, but if you look at his numbers, 19 of 26 for 227, a touchdown and a pick. That's partial to scheme. Part of that has to do with 39 yards to mix in at the end that pad that a little bit, help them get that field goal. But if he doesn't throw that interception, as bad as it was, they have a 10-3 lead. Even if the Steelers go down and score, it's 10-10, and it just doesn't feel the same. That interception happened and everything kind of flipped. The Steelers go down, they take the lead, and that was kind of it. And it never felt really like they were in sync or in it after that offensively. And obviously they scored 3 more points. But it's a tough defense. For as bad as the Steelers offense is, the Steelers defense I think is solid. And the secondary without Minka, not solid, not that great, but still they have a pass rush. They can get after you. It's a tough first ask for him. So I'm not burying Jake Browning yet. And the other part of this takeaway was
can I just have one note on Browning real quick?
Sure.
80 of those yards came on the screen and deflected passes that Jamar Chase collected. So I'm just putting that out there. If he had 200 something yards, 80 of them come on plays where at least one, if not 2 of them could have been intercepted. I don't mean to be too negative, but I'm not pulling punches on Browning. I don't think he was good. I don't think the coaches necessarily helped him, but I thought he was very bad in this game.
And that's something to watch for. Browning's going to start on Monday Night Football. I'll confirm it right now, but I do think that's there is a path for us to him not necessarily start the remainder of the season. So we'll see there. I don't know how long that leash is, but just final numbers wise, it does look better than the eye test. There's no doubt about that. But speaking of numbers, the Bengals, they gave up 16 points, and yet the final numbers given up, yards specifically, it was ugly. Let's switch gears. Let's reflect on this defense following a record-breaking in the wrong way performance as the Steelers top 400-plus yards against the Bengals defense. We'll do that coming up next.
Yards are not points. And PrizePicks is the daily fantasy sports platform that is the largest in North America, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you hit those picks, the winnings come in. You can even do cross-sport stuff right now with the NBA going on. And if you just want to get out of the NFL altogether, maybe you need an escape from the Cincinnati Bengals right now and from NFL player more or less choices, and you want to get into the NBA instead, well, that is an option for you. They've even got some injury insurance built in with the reboot policy, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured in football and basketball games, which Sounds pretty good to me. A little bit of built-in insurance. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL right now and use promo code LockedOnNFL. You'll get a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL with promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy.
Today's show is also brought to you by Schultz Jewelers. I love Schultz Jewelers, and you will too, whether it's the fact that they're locally owned and operated, the fact that Matt Schultz is a gigantic Bengals fan, or their experience, 70-plus years making the Queen City sparkle. Yes, Schultz Jewelers in Fort Mitchell is going to help you find that perfect piece of jewelry, whether it's that diamond ring for your soon-to-be fiance, whether it's that necklace, earrings, maybe a custom piece that is going to be perfect for her this holiday season. Schultz Jewelers is a modern jewelry store. Between their custom designs, top-rated permanent jewelry, there's not anyone like them, certainly no one in the area. You got to check them out right now. And make sure you tell them that Locked On Bengals sent you. They're at 2202 Dixie Highway in Fort Mitchell, 5 minutes from the bridge into Kentucky. You can check them out online as well at Schultz Jewelers or SchultzDiamonds.com, SchultzDiamonds.com. That's SCHULZ Diamonds.com. We know the Bengals strive for perfection. Schultz Jewelers does too, because when it has to be perfect, it has to be Schultz Jewelers.
Let's talk about this defense, James. I actually have one other thought that I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about the run game. Then we'll go defense. This is quick. I think that more than the 8 carry issue or the play calling issue in the running game is you hinted at this, but more annoying to me than that was the lack of usage for Chase Brown. It's just you got to see what you have there. That's where we're at in this season. Anyway, defense. Starting out on a positive here. Myles Murphy really showing something, had a couple of really nice reps as a pass rusher. What did we talk about as far as things to watch? One of them being Myles Murphy. If he could flash going down the stretch here, could give you some of that Rashawn Gary trajectory. He had some very clean wins in this game. And that is my positive for the defense. I think that's it. 400 plus yards for the Steelers.
No. Let's do another positive. DJ Turner is a baller.
Mixed
bag.
Went at it.
Yeah, he went at it with Deontay Johnson, and man, even when he got beat, recovered on the touchdown. That wasn't forced the incompletion. Obviously, the fumble recovery, had another pass defense. I thought he played well.
Yeah, like I said, I think up and down for him, but certainly some positives there, and I'm still not taking anything away from his future. The who is Gene Steratore, the official who does the broadcast stuff, said that he was surprised the Steelers didn't challenge that touchdown that wasn't. Thought that could have been a touchdown. Not sure I agree. Not going to get too far into that, just mentioning it for anyone who's thinking about it and thinking about what Gene said and saying that, it should have been a touchdown or this or that. And then he got beat over the top on one other play when he missed a jam. But when you mix that in with a couple of nice plays against a good receiver in Deontay Johnson, still like the flashes from DJ Turner, certainly, but don't like being the team that gives up the Steelers' first 400-plus yard game in 59 tries.
Yeah.
And, we talked about a bit of a dead count bounce in the post-Matt Canada era for the Steelers, and they caught that bounce.
Yeah. I mean, Pat Freiermuth. The thing is, in the first half, they had a 39-yard gain, a 29-yard gain, a 24-yard gain, all through the air. And it just can't happen. Not all three of those. 2 of those are seam balls to Pat Freiermuth. And Freiermuth ended up with 100 and something plus yards. So let's see, 120, 9 receptions on 11 targets. George Pickens ended up with an explosive 2 in the second half, the 43-yarder. I mean, it's a lot of explosives.
They were dreadful covering vertical routes today. I think every single vertical they were challenged on, the secondary lost, and the only incompletions on verticals being go balls or the slot fade to Pickens were because of overthrows for the couple that fell incomplete.
And it just can't happen. Like, that can't happen. And that's the part of this defense or this game. The offense is going to take a ton of crap this week. And people are going to see 16 points and think the defense did their job. And in one aspect, they did. But they did not do their job. 400-plus yards. You mentioned the time of possession. Some of that is on this defense. Get off the field. And they didn't. And it's
not in the second half.
In
the first half.
Sure, they did in the first half. Yeah.
3 of 9 for the Steelers in the first half, and then they converted like 5 straight third downs until the game was pretty much over.
Yeah, you're right. The second half, that was it. I mean, they scored. They took their time. They ran a bunch of time off the clock, and that's tough to do. It's tough to survive that way, given what you know you're going to deal with on offense. And so you take the 16 points. You'll certainly take that on Monday Night Football against the Jags. I think it'll be much harder to pull that off. But it's a defense that is clearly flawed, and they're working through some things. And hopefully you can get Cam Taylor-Britt back, and he helps. Hopefully Sam Hubbard feels even better a week later after returning today. And by the way, Trey Hendrickson, just mentioning it, he reached the double-digit sack mark for the second time in 3 years. He's got 10.5 sacks now on the season.
Good for Trey. The only other note that I would throw in on the defense is red zone defense stood up again. This has been a pretty good area for this team this year. And it's one of those things that makes a 400 yards conversation and the yards aren't points thing a talking point for Lou. The defense only gave up 1 touchdown and 4 red zone trips for the Steelers, and only 16 points in the end. They got a big turnover. They set the offense up with plus field position. Travion Williams had a big kick return. We talked about special teams and the margins they could play, or the way they could play on the margins this week. Big kick return set up the Bengals' only touchdown of the game. And outside of that, and Pittsburgh special teams wasn't good today, but Brad Robbins, once again, not a great game, unfortunately. I wish we could go a week. I hope soon we can go a week without saying that we see some signs of growth down the stretch for Robbins, but it has been a very turbulent rookie year for the Bengals draft pick at punter.
Yeah, rough for him. Had a touchback, had 1 inside the 20. The other thing, quick note, Logan Wilson, he left the game with an ankle injury late, and I don't think it's anything serious. I think he's dealing with a sprain. We'll see, but I think it's optimism overall. They have the extra day before Monday Night Football, so we'll see if we'll be able to go.
Yeah, and bottom line, things will need to be different for this team. And, you know, we think about what we're looking for from this team down the stretch. And I keep coming back to, 1, player evaluation for guys that are going to be part of this team going forward. But 2, I do think that while there's a big conversation around coaches getting fired and this and that because things are bad right now and they're on a 3-game losing streak, I do think that when you take away Burrow, it does magnify the burden on the coaches to find ways to adapt, and they will need to have some bigger adaptations the rest of the way. And Lou and the defense, I mean, this is 3 games now. We go back to Buffalo, we go back to San Francisco, pretty pleased with the defense in those games. You go back to earlier in the year against Tennessee, and the last 3 games, they need to find some answers. They need to find the right buttons to press at the right times, and it needs to be more consistent. So these are some of the things that I think need to be on our mind for the rest of the season, is looking for the way they adapt to personnel, looking for the pieces that will be part of this team in the future, and looking for the coaches to give those guys playing time as well. I keep going back to Chase Brown hardly playing in this game and not even getting a touch. And I mean, same could be said for Charlie Jones, right? Did he touch the ball?
I don't think he was in on offense. Yeah, I don't think he was in on offense. Andre Yosavash obviously had the catch for 16-yarder for a first down, played a little bit. But, yeah, this youth movement, it did not happen against the Steelers. And you're right, it needs to happen. They need to find out what they have And I think those guys are capable of helping. By the way, even if you don't think Chase Brown can play, I'm sure he can average 2 yards a carry. That's what you are averaging with your running backs for whatever reason. So why not give 30 a touch or two? Just a touch or two. That's all.
And we'll see what happens when T. Higgins returns as well. Can be a bit of a shot in the arm to help things. But we've got a long week to prepare for here, James. The Bengals have Monday Night Football, Jacksonville Jaguars coming up. And we've got a bunch of coverage for you between now and then. Some player evaluations, some thoughts on scheme. That'll be coming this week in addition to Crossover Thursday. And we'll keep things rolling here on the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of Locked On Bengals, and have a good one.